All right, so we finished up chapter 2 talking about the TCP/IP model. So pretty cool stuff, right? You're going to notice that chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and maybe chapter 4. Let's see, let's take a look at chapter 4. I mean, why say maybe? And chapter 4 are going to be a lot of concepts. This is normal with the CCNA. Do not get an idea that your entire time is going to be theory. Unfortunately, the part of the course has to start off this way because there's lots of things that we need to understand. You know, when we put on an IP address, there's things happening in the background. The second we do a no shut on that interface, things happen. So it's the best to know what's happening in the background. We can't really troubleshoot something if we don't really understand what we're trying to accomplish when we do it. So there's a lot of theory in the beginning. And even when we get into starting to configure the routers and stuff like that and the switches, you start to realize that there's still theory with it, but it's kind of a 50-50 thing going on. You're spending a lot of time on the equipment, but you're also going back to go through those theories and so on and so on. But nonetheless, TCP/IP is a suite. It's a stack of protocols. It's a mixture of IP protocol and TCP protocol. So what we talked about earlier was the fact that when we were going through the OSI model, how TCP was guaranteed and UDP was not guaranteed, was just best effort. And up here you can see it says TCP is a protocol stack used for communication between nodes. Now, it's not the only protocol out there that can be used to communicate between nodes. And what are nodes? That's right, nodes are PCs, just like we were talking about before. And TCP is the concept of having guaranteed delivery, which means whoever you're communicating with, they're going to be communicating behind the scenes along with the transformation of the data to make sure that each one is getting each piece of data. So let's take a look at PC1 here and PC2. As PC1 is sending data over to PC2, PC2 is going to receive that data coming in on its interface, and then PC2 is going to send a message back saying, hey dude, I got it. And that's just pretty much it. And they'll keep going back and forth for every piece of data that they keep sending to each other. They're going to acknowledge that they got that piece of data. And this is how this guaranteed delivery works. Now, UDP is pretty much PC1 is going to take the information and send it out of this interface, and he's not expecting anything back. Now remember the important aspect of the OSI model. What's really the main key factor of why we learn the OSI model? Yes, we learn it as a means of learning how to communicate and so on and so on. But the main thing that we're learning here is the building of the headers. That's really the most crucial aspect. As the PC1 is building something or is trying to send data, he's going to build that information. Now, what does that mean? That means I'm going to have my data here. Here's my data. If I have port information, my layer 4 goes here. That might, we'll say just port 33. Just pick whatever port number. On top of that, that layer 3 header is going to have the source IP and the destination IP. And then on top of this, the layer 2 is going to have its header information. And it's going to have the source MAC and the destination MAC. Now, when we put something in front of the real data, we like to call the data the payload. This is a term I don't use often as far as the course is concerned, or just in general. I feel that communicating with you or anyone, there's certain words that I use and I don't try to use those words. just because I'm teaching. But the payload is just whatever you're sending. To me, that's just data. I mean, all of this is data, but the bottom line is when I have this setup here, the data will be the payload. The payload is what we're trying to get, the real information we're trying to get from PC1 to PC2. We have to understand that once the data has information in front of it, which you have to understand this as well, the data has to have something in front of it. Because if this information is in here, like I showed you in the OSI model, the data is not going to go anywhere anyway. If we did not have source and destination IP addresses, source and destination MAC, the data just won't go anywhere. If PC2 received this data coming in here with no other information, PC2 is going to say, well, okay, but I have no idea if that's for me, so I don't really care about it. Only when PC2 sees that the information is for him, he will accept that information. Now, it's still coming into the network card. Don't get me wrong. It's not like if you just block all this data and you're not going to be eating up the bandwidth of your network card. Now, when I say the bandwidth, really we're talking about the bandwidth of the network card as it's going across the wire. The network card has its bandwidth itself, but I'm talking about as the wire is coming in. I mean, as the data is coming across the wire. So, if we have a bandwidth of 100 megabits per second, and this is being filled up with data and your bandwidth is maxed, they might be dropping 90% of the data that's coming in there, but the bandwidth is still used. Does that make sense? I mean, it still has to get there in order for it to get dropped. And you can think of it as a traffic jam. You got thousands of cars going on this one highway, and only 10% of that is allowed to go through. Well, the traffic is still backed up. Your bandwidth is still used. So because of this, we need this information in order to figure out where it's going and figuring out if that data belongs to me. Now, when we put something in front of a data, we call it encapsulation. We call it this because of the fact that the second I put a layer 4 information on here, I can't see the data anymore. This is all I can see. Once I put layer 3 information on here, I'm not looking at the layer 4 or the data. I'm looking at this. Once I put this layer 2 information on here, I'm not looking at the layer 3 information. I'm looking at the layer 2. The reason why we call it encapsulation, look at it like this. It's encapsulated because you're not going to pay attention to layer 3 or 4 or data. You don't know what's behind there until you decide from the layer 2's perspective, the layer 2 header, that this belongs to you. So if this is going to a destination MAC address of AAAA, and this PC down here, MAC address is BBBB, when that data comes into this network card, PC1 is going to look at it and say, well, wait a minute. I'm looking at the destination MAC here of the layer 2 information, the layer 2 header, and it doesn't belong to me. Well, if it doesn't belong to me, what am I going to do with it? I'm going to drop it. I'm not even why would I go any further? That's the concept of encapsulation. We have taken the data and we have encapsulated that data with layer 4 information. Now, if we encapsulated that with layer 4 information, now we have this data that's literally is going to be encapsulated by layer 3 information. And if that's the case, then we're going to have this data that's encapsulated by layer 2 information. And then, of course, this whole piece of data is what's going to go into the PC. Now, if the PC2 sees that the destination is BBBB, then PC1 will say, oh, well, that's my MAC address. It's for me. So I'm going to go ahead and strip off the layer 2 information, look at layer 3. Then I'm going to look at the what? Destination MAC address. I'm sorry, destination IP address. And if that destination IP address belongs to me, then I will strip that off and look at the layer 4 information. So anyway down the line, this data will be lost or dropped if it doesn't belong to them. So what does this mean? With TCP, we are sending all this data back and forth and guaranteeing the data. However, with UDP, that data gets sent out, which means I'm going to take my data, I'm going to build my layer 3 information, I'm going to build my layer 2 information. Yeah, we didn't have layer 4 in there in that time. Remember, if we're not going to use the information, there's nothing to put in there, right? And we're going to just send this out the interface. Now, because PC1, or PC2, sorry, because PC2 is connected on the other side of this link, he will get that information. But PC1 has no idea if PC2 got it. I mean, this wire could go somewhere else. PC1 doesn't know. I mean, what if PC1 was sitting on a switch? If PC1 was sitting on a switch, and so was PC2, PC1 just knows he sends it out. That's it. He has no idea he's connected to a switch, nor does he care. He just knows that he has an uplink, and that's the active interface that data needs to go out of. That's all he knows, and that's all he cares about. So UDP we like to call best effort delivery. There's no guarantee. Now, the real lesson of this, though, is really what TCP does. Now, we saw this before looking at the TCP IP protocol suite. And when we look at this and we compare it to the actual OSI model, we got the data link sitting here. We got the network sitting here. Let's move this over here. We got the data link. We got the network, and we got the transport. Now, at the transport layer of the OSI model is where TCP and UDP sits for our TCP IP protocol suite. Now, remember, this is a suite of protocols. This is not a model that we're looking at here. This is actually the TCP IP protocol suite. So, of course, this portion, these protocols of the TCP IP suite, the TCP and UDP, is just showing you what layer of the OSI model it works at. And it's going to be the transport layer. Now, based on that, let's find out how TCP initiates and starts communication between two PCs. When PC1 wants to set up a TCP communication, which means if an application like Firefox decides that he wants to, he, she, or it, that Firefox itself wants to set up or get some data from a web server. Now, once this happens, before data can really come from PC 1 and 2, we have to have a TCP three-way handshake established first. Now, this is very important to understand because the real data is what Firefox is going to be receiving from the server. If that's the case, I need to have this method of setting up communication first before I get any data, which means if we cannot get through the three-way handshake first, we would never be able to start sending data. And what's the three-way handshake? Well, we have two types. We have two types of systems we're dealing here: the client and the server. So in a TCP session, whoever initiates the actual communication, they're going to send out what is called a sing message. S-Y-N, I might have said it wrong, but send message, sorry. I just said sing, but send message. Now this send message is saying, I'm trying to synchronize with you. And because PC1 is the one who sent out the original send message, he becomes the TCP client. And the person he's trying, whoever is receiving this send message, which is the PC that PC1 is trying to communicate with becomes a server. All because this dude initiated it. So he's the client. So now he becomes a server. Now, when this send message goes over to PC2, PC2 is going to receive it. He's going to look at that send message. Now, remember, everyone, there's certain when we're communicating, there's certain information that we have to have. Remember, we might be sending out a send message, but this is still a message. It's still data. So what else do we still need in there? Well, we need the layer 3 information, source and destination IP. You're going to have those headers on there, and you're going to have the layer 2, source and MAC address in this message somewhere. Now, if you looked at Wireshark, you would definitely see it. You will see the TCP information sitting here, and you will see the layer 3 information, the layer 2 information. So remember, this is how PCs are getting the data, the information that they need, all from the headers. So the concept of getting this three-way communication means that what we're trying to establish from both PCs' perspective is the fact that each PC knows that two-way communication is possible. Now, this only guarantees two-way communication at that moment, but still nonetheless. So PC1 sends out a message, goes out of his network card, and it's a send message. The layer 3 information will get that information over to PC1. Now, when I say the layer 3 information, we're talking about the layer 3 information that has encapsulated the data itself. In this layer 3 header, we're going to have the destination IP address, or where we want to go to. So this send message is now our data, so to speak, and that send message is coming over to here, to PC2. Now, when PC2 gets this information, what has this proved at this point? Nothing. The send message actually comes into PC2. All this means is that PC1 has received information. From PC1's perspective, he has no idea if that PC has gotten it. From PC2's perspective, he knows at least data is coming from that PC. So at that point, he would know one-way communication is possible, and that one-way communication would be from PC1 to PC2. So what PC2 is going to do is send out another message over to PC1, saying, I got your sync message, and here's my acknowledgement of that sync message. Now, this is interesting because what this proves at this point, PC1 knows he sent a message out, and he knows he got a message back from that person he sent it to. So now PC2 knows two-way communication is possible. He knows this, but PC2 doesn't. All PC2 knows is that he got data from the source and sent data to the source. He has no idea that PC1 got the acknowledgement that he sent out. So now, because of that, that's where the third handshake comes into play, which is a message coming from PC1 that is just an acknowledgement. Now, this is awesome, because at this point now, PC2 also knows two-way communication is possible. How? Well, PC1 knew that two-way communication was possible when he sent out the send message and got a sync act from PC2. PC2 knows that he has two-way communication. How? Because he sent out a sent act message and got an acknowledgement back. That's how. So now both these PCs know that we have two-way communication. Once the three-way handshake is done, now we can begin our real transmission. Which means if I was trying to send data of just ABC from PC 1 to 2, I just want to say, hey, let's make it a little bit more personal. I want to tell PC2, hello. I want to say, hey, man, how you doing? Well, before I send this message, PC1 needs to make sure we have guaranteed information. because I want to make sure that this hello message is guaranteed. I want to make sure PC2 gets this hello message. So before I send hello message, this process begins. We send out our send, then we get our send act coming back to us. This tells PC, well, I know when I sent the message, I got to send act back from that person that I was sending it to, so two-way communication is possible. PC2 starts to guarantee his two-way communication once he sends out the send act message. And then when PC1 gets back an act, that means two-way communication is done. You can look at it in two ways. You can say that PC2 is actually sending him an acknowledgement of the synchronization, or you can say, I'm acknowledging your send, but I'm going to send you a send myself, so please acknowledge it. Because from these two perspectives, PC1 is saying, look, I'm going to send you a send message. Once I get an acknowledgement back from you, I know it's two-way. So PC2 is going to say, I'm going to send you that acknowledgement so you can guarantee your two-way, but I'm also going to send you a send waiting for an act from you so I can also guarantee my two-way communication is possible from my end. You can look at it from that perspective as well. Or you can look at it and say, look, I'm just, I am focusing on the fact that I'm sending you an acknowledgement of your synchronization that you're trying to do with me. Either way, as long as you understand that this must take place, send act, and acknowledgement before this hello even can be sent, that's the key factor there. Now, all this is very important to know because your transformation, and I keep wanting to say transformation, your transmission, and I apologize that I keep doing that, but your transmission is never possible of the actual data that you want to send until this three-way handshake is established. Remember, this is for guaranteed delivery, which means if this was just best effort, this hello would never go through this three-way handshake. It wouldn't even try. Who cares? I'm just going to send it out. But there's no guarantee he's going to get it. So this must be successful. The three-way handshake must be successful before data is sent. If one of these messages never gets back, two-way communication is not possible, either from PC's one perspective or PC's two's perspective. And if that's the case, it's not going to happen. Eventually it'll time out, and PC1 will try to send the information all over again. And this will keep going until the application itself or whatever's trying to establish these flows will time out. If there is no timeout value, guess what will happen? Well, it'll just keep on going forever. Now, Windows has these establishments. This allows me to see all the information that's going on my machine right now. This is a TCP trying to be established. And it's showing you here, from this IP address, which is my PC here, here's this random port number I was telling you about, 53493. That's a random port number. And it's going to this particular IP address with 8080. And it's telling you that we sent a send message, which means we're trying to set up a TCP session with this. Now, there's other messages in here with TCP. You can obviously go out there and look them up. It's pretty cool. It's nice to know what's really going on with TCP. But you also have these established connections. This is telling you that the TCP session has been established. It's telling you that over here it is a TCP session. It's telling you it's been established. Once it has been established, data can flow. Here's UDP. You know, it's just UDP traffic. It's just telling me, look, I just got UDP. Was that going to my address? Or was it just being sourced from my address? So here, you can also see some of the ports that we're listening on. Here's a port I'm listening on right now. TCP port. It's good to know what your PC is listening on. You might have ports that you really don't want open. This will allow information to come in. You might want to do a research on every port that you have that you're listening on to find out what they are. You might find out that these are viruses. You might find out that it's malware. You might find out this is a port that someone is open. You don't really need it open, and so you go out and you close it. Now, just because it's open and listening on this PC doesn't mean that you can't block it. You can always go in your router and block it. You can also find the commands to make sure that this PC is no longer listening on those ports as well. But once you start getting into this game, make sure that you're aware of what you're doing. You might shut down something that you actually need. So let's talk about these random port numbers. Imagine me going out to a web server. No matter what type of communication I'm going to do, remember guys, we have to build out layer 2, layer 3 information. But since we're trying to communicate with a particular port, since we're using web service, we're also going to have layer 4 information. So, when I'm trying to communicate with a web server, I'm going to send my data. But I'll take this data and I'm going to encapsulate it with what? Layer 4. That layer 4 information is going to have my source port, my destination port. Such as web, that destination port is going to be 80, or 8080, or 443. Now my source port is going to be a random number, just like you saw in my netstack command, showing you all the ports and all the ports that we're listening on, and all the TCP sessions we have established, and so on and so on. That source port is just a random number. 58,212. Now, next time he goes out to send something, when I say he, I'm talking about Windows. The next time Windows goes to send out something, he's going to use 58,2013. He's going to use whatever the next available port number is. That's why we call them random numbers. And that information goes out, because obviously we're going to have the layer 3 with the source and destination IP. And then we're going to have the layer 2 with the source and destination MAC. And this information is going to go out over to the web server. The web server is going to look at the destination MAC and say, oh, well, that's my MAC address. I'm going to go ahead and remove that and take a look at the IP information. Oh, that destination IP, that's for me. And look at the layer 4. Oh, that's port 80. Well, that goes to my web service. Now, just because we have one server sitting here does not mean that it's not doing several types of services. So when this server gets that information and see that it's coming on a port 80, he's going to send that over to his web service. That belongs to my web service. This traffic, as it's coming over to the web server is going to send it to its service, web service. And now when he goes to build the information back, because eventually he's going to look at this data and say, hey, this is a request for information. Let me send that information. So the information he's going to send is going to be what? The data. He's responding to the request. And this is the response. He's going to send data back, which is going to be the response. He's going to build his layer 4 information. And what's that going to be? The source port's going to be obviously himself, which is 80. And the destination port is going to be the source port that came in on the packet in the first place. 58212. Now this makes sense, because if you're going to send out an envelope to someone, they're going to have the address sitting here, 123 Fake Street, and then someone's going to have their return address up here. And we'll say No Avenue. Now this really makes sense, man, because this is the address that it needs to get sent to. When I received this letter coming to Kyle over here, when I received this letter, I don't have to ask them where to respond. I get a request for information. I'm going to respond to that information, and I'm going to build my envelope of my own. And I'm going to take whatever the source information I saw in the letter and put that as my destination. 567 No Avenue. And then my address goes up here. 123 Fake Street. So this makes sense. The information that he got when the packet came in is going to be the information he's going to use to send the packet back. So now he used a destination port number of 58-12, builds his layer 3, builds his layer 2, and sends the data on. That information comes over to here. PC1 says, well, let me look at the layer 2 information. That belongs to me. Let me open it up. Oh, let me look at the layer 3 destination information. That belongs to me. Let me open that up. And then there's the port number, 5812. Oh, well, I know where 58212 goes to. That was that web page that I had open. So this is awesome because if I have 10 web pages pulled up, you know, just all cascading here and all just sitting here, right? If I had all these web pages up, and this was port number 60 and 70 and 80 and 90, well, anytime something was coming in on port 90, it's going to go to this web browser. It's not going to go to these three. It's going to go to this one. Did you ever wonder why, if you had like 20 web pages up, how it always ended up getting to the same one? Well, now you know. Port numbers. But remember, none of this communication is possible until our TCP three-way handshake is established. And that is really good to know. Because if you can't send data, most likely you got a TCP issue. So check it out. I'm not going to say most of the time, but it's definitely something you need to understand is going in the background. The last thing you want to try to figure out is do all these things and rebooting and so on, and realize that your TCP session is never being established. And that's why you can't get communication. So let's take a look at the TCP header here. The TCP header is pretty interesting. We got the source port, which we know now is random for Windows. In most cases, I mean, it could be a static port number. If you only want to communicate from this particular port number and you source it from that port number, the application can do that. So obviously, it knows to come back to that information, to come back to that particular service. Here's the web server. When it actually got the data coming in on this web server, he used this random source port number he might have gotten, but he used a static source port of his own for 80 when he sent the data back out. So it's not always random. We have a destination port. Obviously, if I'm coming from my Windows and open up a web browser, my source port's going to be random. And my destination port going to a web server is going to be 80. If I was communicating with a TFTP server, it'd be 69. If I was communicating via Telnet, it'd be 23. If I was using SSH, 22. Does that make sense? All depends on where you're going and what you're trying to accomplish. Secret numbers and acknowledgement numbers, we're going to be looking at that later on. And window. So this is interesting because remember, this is not source IP and destination IP. Guys, this is just layer 4 information. So when I have a piece of data here, I'm going to encapsulate this data. Now, what does encapsulation really mean? Let's think about that. Our encapsulation means that here's my data. I'm going to put information in front of it. I'm going to put it in this box. I'm going to put information in front of it. I'm going to put it in this box. Now, because I put it in this box, can I see this data anymore? Nope. It's in the box. I'm going to label this layer 4 information. Now, on top of this, layer 4, I'm going to have layer 3, which means I'm going to encapsulate this box with another box, which means I will not be able to see the layer 4 box because it's inside this box. And now here's my layer 3 information, which means now I'm going to even encapsulate it again with layer 2 information. I won't be able to see this box because it's in the layer 2 information. If I said, and let's look at this, I got my layer 4 information, I got my layer 3 information, and I got my layer 2 information. As a CCNA, and a lot of CCNPs will answer this question in this manner. when I ask the question, okay, when I strip back a layer 3 header, or if I remove a layer 3 header, what will I see? And you know what they all say? Most of them, I will see the layer 2 information. No, you won't. Guys, in order for you to see the layer 3 information, you have already stripped back the layer 2 information. The layer 2 has encapsulated the layer 3. And that's what we mean by encapsulation. We have to understand that this TCP header is just for layer 4, which means in my layer 4 information, I'm going to have the source port, the destination port, the sequence number, the acknowledgement number, the window size, which we're going to be talking here shortly. All this information the data gets encapsulated with all this information. And then all this information gets encapsulated with layer 3. It's 20 bytes in size. Well, what does that mean to us? 20 bytes? Well, remember my scale that I was telling you about bits? Let's do it again. A bit is 1 or 0. 4 bits of the nimble, no need to write that. 1,000 bits is a kilobit, but that's not how far we want to go. How about 8 bits? 8 bits equals 1 byte. So if I have 20 bytes, how many bits do I have? What's 8 times 20? 160 bits. So what do we see when we go look at a UDP header? Man, that is beautiful. Source port, destination port. Almost 3 times less the size of a TCP header. Only 8 bytes. Why would we want to use TCP and UDP communication? Well, we want TCP for guaranteed delivery. When do we not want guaranteed delivery? Well, if we want something fast, speedy, and we're not really worrying about it, what if we're sending out data? What if PC1 is sending out data to PC2 every second? Or how about 4 times a second? Do we need that guaranteed every time? Nah, not at all. Not at all. Now, we could have the application on PC2 saying, look, if I don't get information after 3 seconds, then, I don't know what to do. At that point, you can shut down the application, send a warning message, and say, hey, we don't have any communication. I mean, that would be the wise thing to do on PC's 2 end. Well, both of them, because they might need to be communicating back and forth. But at the same time, if this is just a server, if PC1 is just a server sitting over here, and he's just feeding on information, we can actually mix TCP and UDP. I can actually use a TCP method to establish the connection originally, and just from there, just stop it. At that, we're only sending UDP traffic. That's definitely possible. Because we don't want to guarantee 4 times a second that this traffic went across. Not at all. All we want to do is just send the data out. Fast as possible. What can you think that might want to do that? I mean, stock information, that could be one. Think about you designing a network for a stock exchange, where the data needs to be guaranteed, needs to get there quick, fast, but not necessarily 100% reliable. Why would you want TCP traffic to be 100% reliable? I mean, web browsing, wouldn't you? Would you like to get everything guaranteed onto your web page, or you just like to, get whatever might come? Now, again, guys, what does this really mean? Does it mean the stock exchange data isn't guaranteed? No, I don't know. I'm not on the stock exchange network. I don't work on it. And if it was, some data probably would be and some probably wouldn't. But it all depends on the designer of the application and what these people want to do. You have an option. Your option will be UDP or TCP. Pick an option, whatever you want to happen. I know for a fact if I'm doing banking information, don't you think that I will want to do TCP? I mean, you got to admit, if I swipe my card here at, let's see, Kmart, that information comes over here to a server. And where do you think this is handling the process? Here, you swipe your card, comes over to this server, which is probably sitting at a data center somewhere. But where do you think it's going? It's going to some bank over here. Whoever holds the credit card. So don't you think we'd like to have guaranteed information? I bet you the banks want to, because they want to make sure to get their money. They don't want you. We don't want no claims of spending a bunch of time trying to figure out if this card was charged or not. They want guarantee. So our next topic is windowing. Windowing is an interesting concept. Although this graph might not be 100% accurate, we're not looking for accuracy 100% of the time. We're looking for, can you understand the concept? So I want you to think about windowing as a way of me finding out that perfect speed. So here you go. You got this ledge sitting here. You got your window sitting here. And right now the window's closed. So what you do is you open up the window a little bit. And here we go. Here's the window. All right, and you got all these dots on the screen. And air rushes through. Now, eventually, you're still hot. You open up the window to get a little cool. So what do? Let's open the window a little bit more. This allows more air to come through the screen or come through the window and be able to give you cool, and maybe you cool off. Now, what happens if you get a little bit too hot? You get to close this window and lower the flow of air. And that's the concept of windowing. Let's see how this works. I'm going to send one piece of data. And I'm going to send this data from this PC over to this PC. Now remember, windowing is in ITCP. So remember, this is going to be happening via ITCP communication, not our UDP. And I'm going to send this piece of data over. Nice. Now, if I sent this data like this, just like this, the whole time, this might take me 1 week to transfer that data. Now, I get an acknowledgement back stating that I got the data because this is TCP. And then I'm going to send this data again, but I'm going to send it this much data. Ooh, that's nice. I sent this much data. It comes through. Now, at this speed, it might take me 5 hours to download. I get an acknowledgement back, and then I'm going to try to send this much data. Now, at this speed, it might take me 15 minutes to download this file. I get an acknowledgement from this one, we're good to go. Now I get this, I send this much data. This might take me 5 minutes to get my data, to transfer the whole information I need to transfer over. But wait a minute, I don't get an acknowledgement back. Now if I'm not getting an acknowledgement back for all these pieces of data, we got problems. That means somehow this PC, PC2, did not get that data. Now it's time to back off. This is us opening our window every time until the window gets so wide open that we start to lose data. When we start to lose data, we close the window. We shorten it. A little bit more, saying, sorry, too much air is coming through. Let's shut it down just a little bit. And then we get this steady stream of 10 minutes. Have you ever seen data doing this as soon as you download something? 1 week might be an exaggeration, but he might come out and say, this is going to take 7 hours. Then it drops down to 3 hours. Then it drops down to 1.5 hours. Then it drops down to 50 minutes, 25 minutes, and 17 minutes. And then eventually we get this, then we might even drop down to 3 minutes and then probably come back up to our average of 10 minutes. And then it will stay here at 10 minutes throughout the rest of the duration. And this happens quickly. Haven't you noticed this before? This is windowing doing this job. TCP is hungry, which means if you have problems with your bandwidth getting eaten up, and your solution is, let's double our bandwidth. And then you double your bandwidth, and then you say, man, that's getting used up too. Well, let's double it up again. Well, if you're using TCP applications with this windowing will keep going until it can't go anymore. And because of that, you have a potential of eating up no matter what bandwidth you put on there. And maybe quality of service is a better method. We send data out. The acknowledgement that we're getting back is obviously the acknowledgements packets, or not the acknowledgements that we're getting back from TCP, not the three-way handshake, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. Because you saw in the TCP header, we have the three-way handshake, and then we have the TCP header that we were looking at. And in that TCP header, what did we see? We saw secret numbers and acknowledgement numbers. This has nothing to do with the three-way handshake. The three-way handshake has the SYN and the SYN ACT and the ACT. These are messages. So the SYN message is a synchronization message, and the ACT message is an acknowledgement message. These are acknowledgement numbers and sequence numbers. Two different things. Let's talk about our sequence numbers. Sequence numbers is an interesting concept because secret numbers guarantee each data, each packet that's being sent out from PC1 going to PC2. It has this method of understanding how the data, this method of guarantee that the data is coming from PC1 to PC2 by using this method that we call sequence numbers. And let's find out why. PC1 sends out its first packet. Now this is after the TCP session has been established, and now we're starting to send data. And we're sending it via TCP, which means here's my data and what's going to be on top of that data. Guess what? You guessed it. My TCP header. You guessed it. Which is really layer 4, right? It's my layer 4 information. So in this TCP header, we're going to have secret numbers and acknowledgement numbers. Now I'm going to send out a sequence number of 100. Now here's the interesting thing. When this data comes all the way over here to PC2, PC2 is going to say, I got a piece of data with a sequence of 100. Now, PC2 is going to look at that and say, all right, I'm going to acknowledge your 100 by sending you an acknowledgement of 101. Now, this is weird because you figured it would send back an acknowledgement of 100, but that's not the case. When PC2 sends an acknowledgement of 101, he's saying, hey, this is the next packet, the next sequence number that I myself am expecting to see. That's what that means. It's a little weird, but that's exactly what that means. So now with this acknowledgement, don't pay attention to these sequence numbers on this side at this moment. We're not worrying about that right now. So at that moment, or these acknowledged numbers here, we're only worrying about the sequence numbers on this end and acknowledged numbers on this end. So here, I'm going to send an acknowledgement of 101. Because PC1 gets an acknowledgement of 101, he says, okay, PC2 must have gotten 100 because he's expecting to see 101. So I'm going to go ahead and send that. Now remember, behind here is data. As I'm sending this. They're not just sequence numbers. Guess what? It's data behind there with the sequence number on it. So I'm going to send my next piece of data with a sequence number of 101. That comes over here to PC2. PC2 says, okay, I got a sequence number of 101. I'm going to send you an acknowledgement of 102. Okay. That comes back over to here. PC1 says, oh, I'm getting an acknowledgement of 102, meaning that PC2 must have gotten my data with sequence number 101 because he's expecting now to see acknowledgement 102. So now I'm going to send my next piece of data with a sequence number of 102. That comes over here to PC2. PC2 says, I'm getting a sequence number of 102. I'm going to send an acknowledgement of 103 because that's what I'm expecting to see next. That comes over to here. PC1 says, I'm getting an acknowledgement of 103. That means PC2 has received the sequence number of 102, since I'm getting a sequence number of an acknowledgement of 103. So now I know the next sequence number I'm going to send out, and the next piece of data is going to be 103. Now, the reason why you see the sequence number here and the acknowledgement on both sides, the sequence number here and the acknowledgement on both sides, because remember, we got two-way communication here, yes, but this is PC1 sending out his first piece of data. Here's PC2 sending out his first piece of data. The first piece of data he sent was sequence 2. So let's take a look at this. PC1 is going to send out a sequence number of 100. It's going to come over here to PC2. PC2 is going to acknowledge the fact that he got the sequence number, the data with the sequence number of 101 by sending an acknowledgement of 102. However, PC2 has data to send as well. He's going to send a piece of data with sequence number 200. So now, this data comes over to here. PC1 will get data with a sequence of 200 and an acknowledgement of 101. So what does that mean? That means now PC2 says, okay, I got an acknowledgement of 101 from PC2, which means that he got my data with the sequence number of 100. Therefore, I am going to send my next sequence, my next data with the sequence number of 101. And I'm also going to acknowledge that I got PC's 2 data with sequence number 200 by sending him an acknowledgement of 201. And this is where it gets a little confusing because you're just like, I'm kind of lost here. So when you start looking at this data here, you notice that these reds deal with PC1 and these oranges deal with PC2. And this is how it's sent. So here we have data going this way, acknowledgement coming back, but then you have, data sitting here riding on this. Then you have data going this way. So as you can see, the data, as we're leaving, will be here. And as the data is sitting here, attached to this bad boy, as it's coming back. But this is PC2's data. What's in the orange, and what's in the red is PC1's data. And that's how sequence numbers works, which is pretty cool. And that's how your data is guaranteed. So now let's look at windowing along with the sequence numbers. Interesting. Starts to get a little even bigger, right? Now, one of the things that I did not mention, which I'm going to mention here, is what happens when you get the wrong sequence number back or the wrong acknowledgement back. And that's what we're going to look at right here. So I'm going to send one piece of data. Boom. I'm coming over here with a sequence of 100. I'm going to send back an acknowledgement of 101. Telling PC1 that, hey, PC2 must have gotten the data that I had attached to sequence number 100 because he's sending me an acknowledgement of 101. He's expecting to see 101 next. So I send him the sequence number of 101, which is here. And then I'm also going to send some data with 102 on here. This is windowing doing his job. He's starting to send more data. So PC2 sends an acknowledgement back of what? 103. Well, that makes sense because he got sequence number 1 and 2, 101 and 102. He's expecting to see 103 next. That comes over to here. Now I'm going to send 103, but Windows going to say I'm going to try 4 and 5. Now this is an interesting thing. If he's sending 5, what is PC supposed to be sending back to him? 106. But he's not. He's sending 105. Huh. What does that tell PC 1? If PC 1 sent 105, 104, 103, PC 2 should be saying that I'm going to acknowledge you with a 106. But he doesn't. PC 1 gets something back, an acknowledgement back with 105. That's telling PC 1 that, well, wait a minute, I already sent you 105, which means you're not getting 105, which means we got a communication issue here. So at this point, I'm going to lower my window size, and I'm going to resend 105. And when I resend 105, what am I really sending? The same data I sent with 105. I'm resending that data. And I'm going to put that 105 back on there. Well, I don't know exactly. We'll put the exact same 105 on there. It's been a while since I've gone through this with Wireshark to really see how this data moves across. It might use the same secret number, or it might just continue on with the secret numbers that's next in line and resend that data. Again, this is really meant for you to understand how this is happening. Not to be 100% accurate. These are the labs you need to be doing yourself to find out what's really the truth. So my window sizes are going to shorten, and now I'm going to send 105 and 106. Now notice I'm sending the exact amount of data here, even though on this line, I'm sending the same amount of data on this line that I was on this line, even though we dropped the packet and it didn't get sent over. So really, technically, it wouldn't be just one that we wouldn't be sending. It will be two of them that we would not be sending. Which means I'm going to go back to where I know my numbers were accurate. If I sent 3 at a time and I dropped one, why would I send 3 again? I wouldn't. I'm going to send 2. I'm going to shorten my window size. And this is how it all works together, man. This is how your sequence number, your acknowledgement numbers, and your windowing all work together. And it's a beautiful, beautiful concept. And that's how we get guaranteed delivery. Multiplexing is a concept of nothing major. I like to talk about it just briefly. And we'll read what this says up here. The ability to transport different types of data and use port numbers to let the destination host know where the data goes. That's really the concept of multiplexing. That we can have more than one type of data transferring on the same media. Awesome. Which means on my Ethernet, I can run TFTP, HTTP, SNMP, all on the same wire. And what separates that traffic though? How do I know it's HTTP traffic? How do I know this? Oh, by the port number. And this is the concept of multiplexing. Another powerful thing of port numbers. Because when this server saying data's coming in, and let's say we have these nice little queues. HTTP, all's going to go up to here. We kind of got this flow of data coming in, right? We'll say you got these nice little, all this data coming in. And you have this checkpoint, right? This is something I'm just drawing right now. This is not something that's actually accurate. And you got this checkpoint. And at some point, you got this guard sitting here and say, "Oh, okay, here comes this piece of data. Let's grab this one. Let's take a look at the port number. Oh, you're HTTP traffic. Let's throw you through here. Boom." And it's just kind of like this. I think about Men in Black when you had that